Welcome to this week's episode of Let's Chat with Derick. I am your host, Derick Fage. An important topic to discuss today on Let's Chat with Derick, and that is the impact of childhood sexual abuse and exploitation in our communities, of course, communities across the country and in communities around the globe. And I am joined by not only a wonderful, inspirational person, but I'm certainly proud to also call her a great friend of mine, Cynthia Bland. She is the founder and CEO of Voice Found. Cynthia, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Derick. It's so good to see you again.
It's wonderful to
Even
see
if,
you too. And sorry, go ahead, Cynthia.
I said, even if it is remote.
That's right. Even if it is virtually, I'm hearing that I'm sure both of us are hearing that so often during these unprecedented times. And we're going to get to that and talk a little bit about of course, the pandemic and the effect that it's had on yourself and your team, your wonderful organization. But I know you've shared your story many, many times, but for viewers that aren't familiar with your story, I'd like you to start from the beginning and talk about the trauma that you've gone through.
Okay, and I'll try to keep it short. We could talk all day.
Yeah, we certainly could.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I'm going to start from when I disclosed and move backwards. When I was 47 years old, I was in a situation where I was really having a very, very difficult time in my life. I was very stressed, having a lot of panic attacks. Um, Years before, I had been a cocaine addict. I had that under control. I wasn't using anymore. But at this time in my life, there was a perfect storm of things happening all around me, and I felt like I wanted to start using again. So I went for help for that. And during that second meeting, actually, with the counselor, she asked me the question, had I been sexually abused as a child? Of course, I deflected. What do you mean?
Right.
um,
Yeah.
I knew that this had happened to me. It wasn't a case of repressed memory. What it was something that I put away. I just put it away. I didn't deal with it. I didn't talk about it. And, throughout my life, there'd been different things that I'd experienced, but nobody ever put the pieces together. So,
Mm.
as I mentioned, I was, an addict. I also dropped out of high school, even though I have a very high IQ. I had a lot of mental health issues and challenges. I was suicidal, depression, panic disorder. I remember my first panic attack, of course, not being able to name it. I was 8 years old. My parents had
Wow.
us out for our parents had us out for dinner. Sunday dinner, it was a real treat, maybe once or twice a year that we would go out. And I remember sitting in the restaurant and having this overwhelming feeling that I was going to die. Like it was just horrible. Subsequently, I learned that what I had experienced was a panic attack. So these things had happened and transpired in my life, but I had never put the pieces together. And that counselor on that day asking the question, after deflecting, I said, well, yes, I was, and I've never told anybody. And that opened the doors. That started a floodgate of emotion, of falling apart, and then putting
Really?
pieces back together again. Oh,
So,
absolutely.
so Cynthia, it wasn't a sense of relief. It was really a sense. It was almost an overwhelming feeling then for you.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was sexually abused, so I was 5 years old when it started, and my parents, they had no idea. They had trusted a neighbor to look after me, which is not uncommon, right? We have people in
Hmm.
our lives. And, as a parent myself, and I know there have been times, you have a trusted neighbor that people get to
Yeah,
know.
of
And
course.
right? And and so he is the one that had been abusing me. Now, of course, when you're 5 years old and 6 years old, you don't really have the words for what's happening to you anyway. You don't know
Right.
what sex is. And unfortunately, pedophiles, or yeah, this one was definitely a pedophile. He was experienced. They take time. They take their time and they groom not only their victim, but also the people surrounding them. So they're the person that everybody after, when they find out, goes, "Oh, but they were such a pillar of the community, and he was so
Right.
helpful." And so that was the case. He eventually threatened harm on my brother if I said anything, and was very close to my little brother. So of course, I just put that away somewhere. It went on for a couple of years, and as it went on, of course, I began to feel there was something very, very wrong with this. And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, it's now obvious to me, I was feeling
Hmm.
an incredible amount of shame that I had done something, and I had done something wrong, and I couldn't tell anybody. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it took.
we hear that from victims of sexual abuse. It seems very common that there's that feeling of shame that you've done something wrong, that you've caused that in your experience. You've spoken to many who have gone through sexual abuse or sexual exploitation. Is that a common theme?
It is. It is. So when we think of any type of sexual predator, they are a predator, right? So they
Right.
manipulate and turn it around and make you feel like it is your fault, or that it's something that you asked for, right? That it was something that you wanted. And, nothing could be further from the truth, but there is so much shame attached to it. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot to come forward and to, go through the journey of healing. You were asking me earlier how I felt, when I disclosed. And rather than just a euphoric, "Oh, good, someone's, identified it," it's more of
Right.
a overwhelming, "What am I going to do with all of this?" The best part for me was, I think, throughout, was discovering that I was not the only one.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you don't know. You think you're the only person that's felt like this, experienced this, gone through this, and knowing that the consequences of what happened to you, so the panic disorder, the, drug abuse, everything, was as a result of what had happened to me, the trauma I had experienced as a child.
So, Cynthia, when do you get to the point in your life? So, you've disclosed this after 47 years, and then obviously you become more comfortable sharing your story with the knowledge that you start to realize you're going to impact others. You're going to have a great impact on other people. When did the idea of founding Voice Found come into play?
Yeah. So that was interesting. I mean, even sharing your story, I don't think it ever really gets easy. I know you know this yourself with your own trauma and history. For me, the first few years were pretty bad. The first year in particular, I remember one Christmas, just after disclosure, sitting in my living room, and I mean, everything was perfect. People need to know I have amazing family, four wonderful children. Everything in my life looked perfect, right? And I remember
Hmm.
sitting in the living room and feeling I wanted to end my life. It was so overwhelming to me that I had to face this. And that was really scary because I actually felt nothing. And it's the absence of feeling and the
Yeah.
absence of that's it's chilling. It's absolutely chilling. So fast forward my 50th birthday, I was at a spa, actually a local spa, and getting a massage. And that action of having somebody care for me, touching in a, giving me a massage, I really, really reacted to it, and I started crying really hard, because I was learning to love myself, right? I was learning to
Right.
accept good things, and so I kind of fell apart, and I thought, well, how lucky am I? I'm privileged enough that I can afford to have this experience and go to a spa, but so many people that have experienced such trauma don't have the ability. The impact that it has on so many is devastating. It really changes your life trajectory. So I thought, okay, I want to do something. I've had a hard time finding support for myself. I'm not a woman of means. I mean, okay, I was at the spa, but that was like a rare rare event. So
Yeah.
right, if I'm feeling this, I know through talking now with some other people, that people, they can't afford to go to therapists. They can't afford, like, it's expensive, right? And it's not a
Absolutely.
quick fix. It's not a
Yeah.
quick fix. And I thought, if I'm having a hard time finding, support and different types of support, because we don't all heal the same, I'm
Hmm.
sure there are other people out there, that are feeling this. So I thought, I remember I took out a sketchbook when I got home, and I drew a beautiful place that I wanted to have, where people could come who were adults who had experienced child sexual abuse, and there would be different types of healing, music, art, therapy, like all kinds of things. So that was my dream. At the time, I was unemployed. So, how do I even get started on something like that?
Of course.
But okay. But then I started thinking, what can I do? Like, what can I do? Obviously, I'm not ready to open this magical, beautiful place that I've sketched out. But what if we started talking about the situation? What if we started talking about childhood sexual abuse, took it out from that silence, which it still continues to be far too much, and actually educated adults in our community on how to prevent it, what to look for, what to do if you suspect something's going on, how to handle a disclosure. And so that's where it started. And I found a great curriculum from the US, an organization, and we got some volunteers together, trained a lot of people to be able to deliver this training across Canada. In fact, at one point, we were better known in places outside of Ottawa. I think that still could be the case, sadly.
Yeah. No, I
um,
think you're right, actually. I think you're right.
where we were delivering childhood sexual abuse prevention, because it is largely a preventable thing. It
Right.
is not like
Right. And
childhood.
yeah, exactly. And you know what? I mean, I hate to put it this way, but probably one of the reasons why it's such a difficult journey in starting this conversation. It's a hard sell, right? Hey, we're going to come to your community and we're going to talk about childhood sexual abuse and prevention. I mean, some people that you approach, Cynthia, I'm sure you get the, well, we can't talk about that, like we this is one of those taboo subjects. We don't want our kids to even hear about it. Well, those are the people that need to hear about it, not just the adults, right?
Well, and that's the thing, Derek, and I think you've touched on something, and I've given it a lot of thought. First of all, accurate statistics are really difficult, right? Because it's
Yeah.
such a clandestine, crime. But the
Hmm.
majority of children who are sexually abused, it's happening within a family or a neighborhood or people known and trusted. And it's really, really difficult it shouldn't be, but it is very difficult for somebody to come forward and say, hey, that family member did this. And we as adults need to listen to the child who's saying something's going on. Don't tell them, well, we can't disrupt the family, and just it's okay, or uncle so on or aunt so on didn't really mean that, and you must have misunderstood. So instead of putting the child first and protecting the child, it's more about, oh, let's not rock the boat in the family or in the neighborhood, or it does take some courage to come forward, to report, report that somebody has sexually abused your child or a neighbor. But it's what has to happen, right? We just
Hmm.
keep turning away from it and going, well, it really couldn't have been that bad because, they were only looking at, you know, uh, pornography together, or he just exposed himself. Well, it's not just,
Yeah.
it's significant. And,
And
so
as you've explained, that's just the beginning, right?
yeah,
Oftentimes, right? Sure, you might think it's, innocent. Oh, you saw some pornography, probably by mistake or something. These things aren't done by mistake, right?
no, they're not. And that's the process of grooming. So yeah.
Yeah. Cynthia, something else that I think you've learned a lot of, and you've certainly brought to light for me, but I don't think there's a lot of viewers out there that have an understanding of the prevalence of human trafficking. Uh,
Mm.
Maybe we can speak on that a little bit, because I think I'd like you to educate viewers on that, because I think when we think about human trafficking, we don't think about Ottawa or Canada. How prevalent is it?
It's significant. It really is. So, um, I don't have all the latest stats, but again, this is another one of those clandestine crimes. Ontario is a major hub in Canada for human trafficking. In Ottawa, so 6 years ago, we at Voice Found, we added other areas to our organization, and one of them being, addressing sex trafficking. And in Ottawa, in the 6 years, we have worked with over, I think we're at about 260 people. That's in our city.
Right.
And right, and it's happening in every neighborhood. It happens, it doesn't matter social, economic, it crosses everything. Of course, there are some vulnerabilities, right? But
Right.
yeah, it's happening in our city. It's happening. Ottawa has quite a significant number of cases, either that have been reported or not reported. Again, a lot go unreported.
Of
And
course.
it doesn't require somebody to be transported from another country. A lot of people think that, human trafficking, they get put into cargo containers and shipped over, and then they are chained to beds and handcuffed and, kept trapped. And that's not how it works at all. Trafficking is very much a mental, a psychological bond, a trauma bond that is formed with the trafficker. Most often, and what we see frequently in Ottawa, is the type of trafficker or their pimp that we call is a boyfriend pimp. So,
Right.
yeah. So, do you want me to talk a little bit about how that happens? I think that would be
Yeah, I
good
think
for you.
yeah, I think we have some time, and then we can talk move over to talk about some of the programs that you offer. But I think it's important that you share for sure.
Yeah, so just really briefly, and I'm going to talk from the perspective of young women being trafficked, but we know that
Okay.
men are as well. If you can imagine, girls around the age of 12, 13, that is the most common age of recruitment. And, um,
Okay.
there's a lot of insecurity. let's say they're online, some guy starts talking to them, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that. They spend time, they begin a dialogue, and that sort of lures the girl in, and she believes this stuff that she's being fed. It's not long after that that they begin the honeymoon stage, where he will buy her things and treat her like a boy, like a girlfriend, and she
Right.
starts to really crave that love and attention, and she equates everything that he's doing, he's filling needs. And it doesn't take long before they get lured in, and then he paints this fairy tale. They'll get married, they'll have a house, but oh, if you want that, here's what we need to make some money, and here's what you're going
Right.
to do.
It's the
So
grooming
that,
process, right? It's
yeah,
it's again
exactly.
another grooming process.
Yeah, exactly. And so it is happening. It's happening in our city far more than people realize. And uh, oftentimes, many people who are being or have been trafficked have a history of childhood sexual abuse.
I mentioned those programs, so let's talk about, maybe you can just briefly
Yeah.
summarize each program in detail, and then we can go into more detail about your latest program or your newest program with it, which is Strength Found. But tell me what programs that you offer through Voice Found.
Sure. So we have one called the Hope Found Project. Everything in our organization is we are survivor led, meaning that survivors are the people who take control of their journey, if you will. They're the people that are in charge of recovery. Plus, we have people working at Voice Found who have lived experience. So that's key. That's
Yeah.
extremely important. So the Hope Found Project is mostly crisis. That's for people that are just exiting a trafficking situation or contemplating exit. We work really closely with the Ottawa Police Human Trafficking Team and have exceptional partnerships. So that's the Hope Found Project. I'll say that's usually about the first year. It takes a long, long time for somebody to
Mm,
exit. They will often
yeah.
go back to their trafficker, back and forth. So the Hope Found Project, anything they need, we will, well, I should say, depending on how much money we have at the time. But
Right.
so,
Of
you
course.
know, we would have right, exactly. But we really fill gaps. We work with all our community partners, and you know, wherever there is a gap that needs to be filled, we are usually able to do that. Then we have a program called path found, and that's the next stage. So this is where somebody has exited their trafficking situation. They've done some of the really hard work in recovery, so oftentimes, you know, dealing with addiction and stable housing and things like that. But now it's time for more skill development, thinking about getting into the workforce, wanting to live on your own, you know. So that program is a lot of education, peer support, which is constant through all our programs. And you know, yeah, it's that next stage. It's that next stage,
Right.
and again, it can look different ways for different people. And then we opened just over 3 years ago a clinic, and it is called The Clinic. It's really, really original, but you know what?
The marketing department worked hard on that one. Yeah.
That'd be me. Uh, but you know, the thing about it's primary and preventative health care. It's led by nurse practitioners, and it is everything that we do is by appointment only. So it's not drop in. I have to have an appointment, very secure. And really, what happens is most often anybody who's been trafficked will often present to a healthcare provider who will not recognize that they are actually, you know, a victim of this crime. So through
Right.
the clinic, we're able to do all kinds. We provide all kinds of healthcare, primary and preventative healthcare, but also serve as a hub to connect clients to other services that they may need. Appointments are not like your quick 15 minutes, typical at the doctor, they're usually about 45 minutes. And we also provide mental health support. That's a big one.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
critical. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't want to run out of time before we get to some of the initiative I mentioned. Let's quickly talk about the Strength Found program, and then I want to talk about, just an example of some of the initiatives and campaigns that you and your team have worked on. So, first of all, Strength Found.
So we were very fortunate. A private family foundation approached us, and that was, as a founder, that was really amazing. Somebody found us. Great. um, and I'd long wanted a program for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And I wanted a program that would be very accessible for men. I get so many calls from male survivors who really just feel so abandoned and don't have anything. So the program, we offer a number of things, basically three things. First of all, lived experience peer support. Again, really critical. We also have a 15-week program where there's groups, which we do virtually now, but also in person. And then the other thing is social activities. Some of the
Right.
best healing happens in community when you're with other people that have experienced similar things. Now, of course, we haven't been able to do a lot of social activity with COVID,
Of course.
although
Yeah.
we did do a virtual campfire with Sean McCann in the summer, which was very cool.
Oh,
A sing along.
terrific.
Yeah, that
Before we
was
run
fun.
out of time, I've got about a minute left. I'd like you to just give an
Yeah.
example of some of the initiatives. I know that you had a local initiative that you and your team worked on.
Well, yeah, we have had a couple of things. Self care support local week. Really want to encourage people in Ottawa to take care of themselves by purchasing something from a local business where some of the proceeds would come to Voice Found, but also be caring for our community and caring for our businesses that have really had a really tough time with COVID. We always seem to have something interesting up our sleeves and some campaigns coming up that haven't all been finalized yet. But I do want people to start to know about Voice Found. I think we're just this big secret out there, and it's only
Yeah.
because you're right. Only so many hours in the day and dollars in
For
the bank.
sure. Yeah, and it's you and I know, we've worked together in the past, and we know that this is a taboo subject, and people have a difficult time talking about it. But you know what? It's incredibly important to talk about it, and that's why I felt it was so important to have this conversation with you today, Cynthia. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Derick. Always my pleasure.
I want to mention everybody, you can find out all the information at voicefound.ca. You can find about all those programs that Cynthia talked about, and of course, some of the initiatives and campaigns that they have ongoing. And we didn't touch on the pandemic, but I would say, the impact of COVID on when it comes to isolation for those that are going through, sexual abuse and exploitation, human trafficking, addiction. It's such a difficult time for them. So again, you can find out more information at voicefound.ca. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Let's Chat with Derick.